When 11-year-old Zara Wilson set up her sidewalk art sale at Lakeshore Park, she had one desperate goal: raise enough money to help pay for her cancer treatments. With medical bills piling up and her single mother working 2 jobs, Zara was determined to do her part, despite the exhaustion from chemotherapy. Little did she know that as the summer sun beat down on her purple beanie-covered head that day, a chance encounter would change her life forever. As people walked past, some stopping to buy, others averting their eyes, Zara never lost hope. She carefully arranged her watercolor paintings, including her favorite, a red basketball soaring through a blue sky, looking like it might never come down. Just as she and her mother were about to pack up after a disappointing day, a tall shadow fell across her blanket. Zara looked up, squinting against the setting sun, to see a very tall man standing there, his face hidden by the glare. She had no idea that this stranger, this customer interested in her simple basketball painting, was about to set in motion a chain of events that would not only save her life but inspire countless others. This is the remarkable story of courage, art, kindness, and how heroes can appear when we need them most, even on an ordinary day in the park. The summer sun beat down on Lakeshore Park, making the sidewalk hot enough to fry an egg. 11-year-old Zara Wilson shifted uncomfortably on her worn blanket, trying to find a position that didn't make her bones ache more than they already did. The purple beanie covering her bare head trapped heat, but she refused to take it off. Being bald was just another reminder of the enemy growing inside her body. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" her mother Darlene called from a nearby bench. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of too many sleepless nights spent worrying about medical bills. "I'm fine, Mom," Zara said, forcing brightness into her voice. She carefully arranged her watercolor paintings and chalk drawings in neat rows across the blanket. Each piece of art told a story. Bright flowers that would never wilt, soaring. Birds that knew no pain, and starry skies full of wishes waiting to come true. A handmade cardboard sign propped against her backpack read, "Art for sale. Help with my cancer treatment," in rainbow letters. Zara had spent hours making the sign, decorating it with tiny painted butterflies and smiley faces. She wanted it to look cheerful, not sad. People didn't like sad. "Maybe we should move to a busier spot," Darlene suggested, watching the mostly empty sidewalk with worried eyes. "No, this is the perfect spot," Zara insisted. "Remember, Dr. Ramirez said to avoid crowds because of my immune system." What Zara didn't say was that she'd chosen this location because it was close to the bench where she used to sit with her dad before he left them last year. Before cancer. Before everything changed. A middle-aged couple walked by, glancing at Zara's artwork before quickly looking away. Zara's smile never faltered. She was used to this, the awkward avoidance, the pitying looks. It was like her illness made people afraid they might catch something worse than cancer. Sadness. "Good morning," Zara called out cheerfully. "Would you like to see my paintings?" The woman hesitated, then pulled her husband along. "Sorry, not today." Darlene's hands clenched into fists, but Zara just shrugged. "Their loss," she whispered to herself, adjusting a painting of a red basketball soaring through a bright blue sky. It was her favorite piece. The ball looked like it was flying forever, never coming down, never hitting the ground. Free! By noon, the sun was directly overhead. Sweat trickled down Zara's neck, and she felt the familiar wave of nausea that came with her weakened body. But she refused to go home. Not yet. Not with only $17 in the coffee can beside her. "Here, drink some water," Darlene said, handing her a bottle with ice cubes still clinking inside. and take your medicine." Zara swallowed the pills that helped with the nausea, but made her feel fuzzy and strange. Another trade-off in a life suddenly full of them. "How much more do we need?" Zara asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. Darlene's smile wavered. "Don't worry about that now. Every dollar helps." But Zara did worry. She'd overheard Dr. Ramirez talking about an experimental treatment that wasn't covered by insurance. Something that might actually work when nothing else had. Something that cost more money than they could possibly save, even with Darlene working double shifts at the diner and the hospital cafeteria. A young woman in jogging clothes slowed down as she passed, her eyes catching on a small painting of a lighthouse standing firm against crashing waves. "Did you make these?" she asked, kneeling down to get a better look. "Yes, ma'am," Zara said, sitting up straighter. "Each one is an original." "You're very talented." The woman picked up the lighthouse painting. "How much for this one?" $15, Zara said, her heart beating faster. It was really only 10, but they needed the money so badly. The jogger didn't even blink at the UE price. She handed over a $20 bill. "Keep the change. I love lighthouses." "Thank you." Zara carefully wrapped the painting in tissue paper. "They remind me of hope, standing strong even in the worst storms." After the jogger left, a few more people stopped. An old man bought a sketch of a puppy for his granddaughter. A teenage boy chose a drawing of mountains for his mom's birthday. Each sale made Zara's energy surge despite her exhaustion. By late afternoon, the park had grown quieter. Families had gone home for dinner, and the sun was starting its slow descent. Zara counted the money in the coffee can. $43. Not even close to enough. Not even close to making a difference. "Time to pack up, honey," Darlene said gently. "You've had a long day." Zara nodded, too tired to argue. The chemo earlier that week had drained her more than she wanted to admit. She began gathering her remaining artwork, trying not to let disappointment show on her face. $43 wouldn't even cover the parking fees for her next hospital visit. "We'll try again next weekend," Darlene promised, helping fold the blanket. "Maybe we'll make signs to put up around town." Zara nodded, though she wondered if she'd feel strong enough next weekend. Every treatment seemed to leave her weaker than the last. Time was something she could feel slipping away, like sand through her fingers. As they were about to leave, a shadow fell across the blanket. Zara looked up, squinting against the setting sun. A very tall man stood there, his face hidden by the glare behind him. "Excuse me," he said in a deep voice that sounded vaguely familiar. "Are you still open for business? I'd like to buy one of your paintings." Zara dropped the backpack she'd been zipping and quickly spread her remaining artwork back out on the blanket. Yes, we're still open." The man stepped closer, and Zara could see he was wearing expensive-looking athletic clothes, sunglasses, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face, as if he didn't want to be recognized. There was something about him that made her heart beat. Faster, though she couldn't say why. "Take your time," Zara said, trying to sound professional even as excitement bubbled inside her. "Each piece tells a different story." The tall stranger nodded, carefully examining each painting before stopping at the red basketball soaring through the blue sky. Her very favorite one. "How much for this one?" he asked, his large hand hovering over the painting like he already knew it belonged to him. Zara swallowed hard. She hadn't even meant to put that one up for sale. It was the last painting she'd made before her diagnosis, when she still believed impossible things could happen. $20, she said, her voice stronger than it had been all day. "It's one of my favorites," the man nodded, studying the painting. "Mine too." I like how the basketball looks like it's flying. Like it might never come down. Zara's eyes widened with surprise. Most people just saw a simple painting of a basketball, but this stranger had understood exactly what she'd been trying to show. "That's exactly what I was trying to show," she exclaimed, a genuine smile lighting up her pale face. "Most people don't get that." The tall man chuckled, the sound warm and rich like hot chocolate on a cold day. He crouched down to get a better look at the painting, his large hands dwarfing the small canvas as he picked it up carefully. "You've got talent, young lady," he said. "The way you captured the motion. That's not easy to do." Darlene had moved closer now, hovering protectively near Zara. The stranger seemed to notice her concern and straightened up, offering a reassuring smile. "Your daughter's quite the artist," he said. "Thank you," Darlene replied, her posture relaxing slightly. "She's been drawing since she could hold a crayon." The man turned back to Zara. "How long have you been painting with watercolors?" "About 2 years," Zara answered, tucking a loose thread from her beanie behind her ear. "My art teacher, Ms. Lowry, taught me before I had to stop going to school." A flicker of something, maybe sadness, crossed the man's face. "And why did you have to stop going to school?" Zara glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod. They'd learned early on that honesty was easier than trying to hide her condition. "I have leukemia," Zara said matter-of-factly. "The treatments make me too sick and tired for school sometimes, and my immune system isn't strong enough to be around so many germs." The man was quiet for a moment. "That's tough," he finally said, no pity in his voice, just understanding. "But you're still creating beautiful art. That takes real strength." Zara shrugged, though his words made her feel warm inside. "Art helps me forget about being sick. When I'm painting, I can go anywhere, be anything." "I understand that," the man said, surprising her. "Basketball was like that for me growing up. No matter what problems I had, they disappeared when I was on the court." As he reached for his wallet, he nodded toward her sign. "So you're raising money for your treatments?" Darlene stepped in. "Insurance covers some of it, but..." She trailed off, the weight of their financial struggles evident in her voice. "There's this new treatment," Zara explained, her eyes brightening with hope. "It's experimental, but Dr. Ramirez says it might help people like me. But it costs a lot of money, and insurance won't pay for it yet." "How much does this treatment cost?" the man asked, his expression serious now. Darlene shook her head slightly, not wanting Zara to think about such overwhelming numbers. But Zara had overheard enough conversations to know. "Over $100,000, she said quietly. "Maybe more." The man whistled low. "That's a lot of paintings." "Yeah," Zara agreed with a sad smile. "But I have to try, right? Mom worked so hard already, and I wanted to help somehow." The stranger nodded, something shifting in his expression. He pulled out his wallet and removed a bill that Zara couldn't see clearly. "The painting is $20, he reminded him. "I know," he said, handing her a folded $100 bill. "But I think your art is worth more than you're charging." Zara's eyes widened as she unfolded the bill. "But this is..." "Fair price for a masterpiece," the man interrupted with a smile. When Zara began searching for change, he shook his head. "Keep it. Your art is worth every penny." Darlene started to protest. "Sir, that's very generous, but..." "Please," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I want to do this." Something in his tone made both Zara and her mother fall silent. The man carefully took the basketball painting, treating it like it was made of glass. "Do you mind if I ask what you're going to do with it?" Zara couldn't help asking. The man smiled. "I'm going to hang it in my office. I have a feeling it's going to bring me luck." Zara beamed at the thought of her painting hanging in someone's office. "Thank you for buying it. Thank you for creating it," he replied. "What's your name, artist?" "Zara Wilson." "Well, Zara Wilson, keep painting. The world needs your art." He glanced at Darlene. "Which hospital does Zara receive her treatments?" "At Lakeshore Children's Hospital," Darlene answered, a hint of suspicion creeping back into her voice. "Why do you ask?" "I do some charity work with hospitals," he explained vaguely. "Always good to know which ones are taking good care of kids in the community." As he turned to leave with the painting carefully held in his large hands, a gust of wind caught his cap. He reached up quickly to secure it, but not before the cap shifted enough for Zara to see his full face clearly for the first time. The recognition hit her like a lightning bolt. Those eyes, that smile, the incredible height, it all suddenly made sense. "You're Michael Jordan," Zara blurted out, her voice echoing across the quiet park. The man froze for a split second, then slowly turned back with a grin and removed his sunglasses. "You got me, young artist," Darlene gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, you're really..." Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, was standing right in front of them, holding Zara's simple watercolor painting as if it were a treasure. "I'm sorry," he said with a chuckle. "I didn't mean to hide who I was. Sometimes it's just easier to walk around without being recognized." Zara couldn't believe it. Her painting was going to hang in Michael Jordan's office. Wait until she told her best friend Talia. She would absolutely freak out. "Can I?" Zara swallowed hard, gathering her courage. "Could I maybe get a picture with you? Nobody at the hospital will believe this happened." "Of course," Jordan said, kneeling down beside her blanket so they were at the same level. Darlene fumbled for her phone with shaking hands and took several photos of Zara and the basketball legend side by side. "Are you in town for long, Mr. Jordan?" Darlene asked, still looking stunned. "Just a few days," he replied. "I'm here for a charity event at the convention center. I was taking a walk to clear my head before tomorrow's speeches when I spotted Zara's artwork." As Jordan prepared to leave again, he paused, looking thoughtful. "Zara, you said you're treated at Lakeshore Children's Hospital, right? Who's your doctor there?" "Dr. Ramirez," Zara answered. "He's the head of pediatric oncology." Jordan nodded, committing the name to memory. "Good to know." He carefully tucked her painting under his arm. "Keep fighting, Zara, and keep creating. You've got gifts this world needs." With that, he slipped his sunglasses back on and continued down the path, his tall figure soon disappearing around a bend in the park. Zara and Darlene sat in stunned silence for several moments. "Did that really just happen?" Darlene finally whispered. Zara looked down at the $100 bill in her hand, then at the photos on her mother's phone, showing her sitting next to Michael Jordan. "It really did," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Michael Jordan bought my painting." As they packed up the remaining artwork, Zara felt a strange new energy coursing through her tired body. For the first time in months, the heaviness of her illness seemed lighter somehow. "Do you think he really meant it about hanging my painting in his office?" she asked as they walked to the car. "Or was he just being nice?" Darlene put her arm around Zara's thin shoulders. "Honey, a man like that doesn't say things he doesn't mean. I bet your basketball painting will be on his wall by tomorrow." Zara smiled, clutching the $100 bill. But it wasn't the money that made her happy. It was the way Michael Jordan had looked at her painting, like he really saw something special in it, like he saw her as an artist, not just a sick kid. That night, as Zara lay in bed feeling the familiar aches that came with her condition, she didn't focus on the pain like she usually did. Instead, she closed her eyes and imagined her red basketball, soaring through the blue sky on Michael Jordan's office wall, flying forever, never coming down. For the first time in months, Zara fell asleep with a smile on her face. The next morning, Sunday, Zara woke to the smell of pancakes, her mom's special recipe with cinnamon and vanilla. Darlene only made them on special occasions or when Zara had a particularly rough day at the hospital. Today wasn't either of those, but meeting Michael Jordan certainly counted as a special occasion. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Darlene called, as Zara shuffled into their small kitchen, her purple beanie slightly crooked from sleep. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Zara said, surprised to find it was true. She still had the familiar ache in her bones and the tiredness that never seemed to go away. But the excitement from yesterday had given her a new energy. "I dreamed that Michael Jordan came to our art sale," Zara said, sliding onto a chair at their worn kitchen table. Darlene laughed, flipping a pancake with expert precision. "That wasn't a dream, honey." She pointed to her phone propped against the sugar bowl. "I've already looked at the pictures 10 times to make sure I wasn't imagining it." Zara grabbed the phone and swiped through the photos from yesterday. There she was, sitting on her blanket next to the towering basketball legend, both of them smiling at the camera. In the last photo, Jordan was carefully holding her basketball painting. "I still can't believe it," Zara whispered. "Well, believe it," Darlene said, placing a stack of pancakes in front of her daughter. "And there's something else for you to believe." She pulled an envelope from her pocket and placed it next to Zara's plate. "What's that?" Zara asked, drizzling maple syrup over her breakfast. "Open it." Inside the envelope was a receipt from Lakeshore Children's Hospital. At the bottom, in big red letters, it read, "Paid in full." Zara looked up, confused. "I don't understand. How did you pay this? It was over $2,000? Darlene sat down across from her daughter, her eyes shining with tears and something else. Hope. "I didn't pay it. When I checked our account online this morning, it showed that someone had made a payment yesterday evening. The entire balance for all your past treatments, every cent, has been paid." Zara's fork clattered against her plate. "But who would—" She stopped, her eyes widening. "Do you think Michael Jordan?" Darlene shook her head, but not in denial. "I don't know for sure. The payment was made anonymously. But the timing— It has to be him," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But why would he do that? He only bought one painting. Some people have big hearts, sweetheart. And from what I've heard, Michael Jordan does a lot for children's charities." Darlene reached across the table and squeezed Zara's hand. "What matters is that we don't have to worry about those bills anymore. We can focus on getting you better." Zara tried to eat her pancakes, but excitement made it hard to swallow. Michael Jordan had not only bought her painting, but might have paid off their hospital bills too. It seemed too incredible to be true. After breakfast, Zara felt well enough to sit on their small apartment balcony and sketch. Drawing always helped her process her feelings, and right now she had so many emotions swirling inside her that she needed her art more than ever. She was working on a new basketball design when her phone buzzed with a text from Talia. "OMG, Zara, you're on the news!" Seconds later, Talia called, practically screaming with excitement. "What are you talking about?" Zara asked, confused. "Channel 7! They showed a picture of you and Michael Jordan. There's a story about him being in town for some charity thing, and they showed a picture of him at the park buying art from a local young artist battling cancer." "That's you! What? Are you serious?" Zara scrambled off the balcony chair, rushing inside to find her mother already turning on the television. They caught only the end of the segment, a photo of Zara and Jordan at the park, with the news anchor saying, "Taking time during his visit to support a young local artist. Jordan is in town for the annual Children's Charity Gala at the convention center tonight." "We're famous," Talia squealed through the phone. "I told everyone at school that you're my best friend." After hanging up with Talia, Zara sat in stunned silence. The story hadn't mentioned her by name, but seeing herself on TV was surreal enough. "At night, you think he'll mention me at the gala?" Zara wondered aloud. Darlene shrugged, turning off the TV. "I don't know, honey. But what he did yesterday was special. Just between you and him. That's what matters." Throughout the day, Zara's phone kept buzzing with messages from classmates who'd seen the news. Even Ms. Lowry, her art teacher, texted to say how proud she was. For a few hours, Zara wasn't the girl with cancer, but the girl whose art, Michael Jordan, bought. By evening, though, the excitement had drained her limited energy. Zara's usual Sunday night dread began to creep in. Tomorrow meant another hospital visit, more tests, more needles. The shadow of her illness, briefly pushed aside by yesterday's events, loomed large again. As she got ready for bed, Zara checked her social media one last time. To her surprise, she had a notification that the official Michael Jordan Foundation had started following her art account, the one Talia had convinced her to create months ago to share her drawings. "Mom!" she called out. "Look at this!" Darlene hurried in, reading the notification over Zara's shoulder. "Oh my goodness," she breathed. "Maybe he really did like your art that much." "Should I send them a message?" Zara asked, her finger hovering over the screen. "I think that would be fine," Darlene said. "Just be polite and thank them for the follow." Zara carefully typed, "Thank you for following my art account. It was an honor to meet Mr. Jordan yesterday. His kindness meant the world to me. Zara." Wilson, she hit send before she could overthink it, then placed her phone on her nightstand and snuggled under her covers. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight she still had this magical feeling to hold on to. "Mom!" she called as Darlene turned to leave her bedroom. "Do you believe in miracles?" Darlene paused in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the hall light. "I didn't used to," she said softly, "but these days, I'm starting to." Monday morning arrived with the harsh buzz of Darlene's alarm clock at 5:30 a.m. Hospital days, always, started early. Zara dragged herself out of bed, feeling the heaviness in her limbs that had briefly lifted yesterday. She chose her favorite soft t-shirt to wear under her hospital gown and packed her sketchbook and colored pencils. Art was her best distraction during the long hours of treatment. As they drove to Lakeshore Children's Hospital, Zara checked her phone, half hoping for some response from the Jordan Foundation. There was nothing yet, but she told herself not to be disappointed. Famous people were busy. The hospital's familiar antiseptic smell hit Zara as soon as they walked through the sliding doors. She had been coming here for 6 months, but she still hadn't gotten used to it. The nurses at the reception desk greeted her by name, a kindness that somehow made everything both better and worse. "Good morning, Zara," Nurse Peyton called, her bright smile a welcome sight. "I hear you had quite an exciting weekend." Zara blinked in surprise. "You know about that?" Nurse Peyton winked. "Honey, Everyone in the hospital is talking about it. It's not every day one of our patients meets a legend. As Nurse Peyton led them to the oncology floor, Zara noticed the staff giving her curious glances. Word had spread fast. By the time she was settled in her treatment room, connected to the IV that would deliver her chemotherapy drugs, Zara felt like a minor celebrity. Her doctor, Dr. Ramirez, came in with an especially wide smile. "So, Zara the artist meets Michael Jordan. I'm impressed." "It was just luck," Zara said, blushing. "He happened to walk by our art sale." Dr. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways." He checked her chart and added, "I see all your past balances have been paid. Your mom must be relieved." "We think it might have been Mr. Jordan," Zara confided, "but we're not sure." The doctor's expression gave nothing away, but his eyes twinkled. "Like I said, mysterious ways." He patted her shoulder. "Let's focus on getting you better, okay? The latest results from your blood work are showing some improvement." Once Dr. Ramirez left, Zara opened her sketchbook and began drawing. The chemo drugs made her feel sick and fuzzy-headed, but creating art helped her escape the hospital room, the needles, the beeping machines. As the hours passed, she covered pages with colorful drawings, not just basketballs this time, but wings and stars and possibilities. Someday, she promised herself, she would make enough paintings to pay for the experimental treatment Dr. Ramirez had mentioned. Somehow, she would find a way. Little did Zara know that at that very moment, in a downtown hotel suite, Michael Jordan was sitting in a chair looking at her simple message on his foundation's social media account and making a phone call that would change her life forever. 2 days later, Zara was back in the hospital for another round of chemotherapy. The excitement of meeting Michael Jordan had faded somewhat, replaced by the harsh reality of her treatment. Each session left her more exhausted than the last, her body fighting not just the cancer, but also the powerful drugs meant to save her. "How are you feeling today, sunshine?" Nurse Peyton asked as she adjusted Zara's IV line. "Like a truck ran over me, backed up, and ran over me again," Zara replied with a weak smile. Nurse Peyton chuckled. "At least your sense of humor is intact. That's a good sign." As soon as the nurse left, Zara reached for her sketchbook. Drawing was her escape, the one thing cancer couldn't take from her. Today, she had a specific mission in mind. "Mom, can you help me tape these to the wall?" she asked, carefully tearing out completed drawings from her sketchbook. Darlene looked up from her phone where she'd been answering work emails. "You want to decorate your room?" "Not decorate, transform," Zara said with determination. "If I have to be stuck here all day, I might as well make it look less like a hospital room and more like an art gallery." Darlene smiled, tucking her phone away. "I think that's a wonderful idea." Together, they began arranging Zara's artwork on the sterile white walls. There were landscapes of places Zara had never visited but dreamed of seeing. Mountains with snow-capped peaks, beaches with crystal blue water, forests with trees that reached toward endless skies. There were portraits of the hospital staff who had become like family over the past 6 months, and there were abstract pieces full of color and movement that expressed feelings Zara couldn't put into words. When Nurse Peyton returned an hour later, she stopped in the doorway, her mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. "Zara Wilson, what have you done to my hospital room? Do you like it?" Zara asked anxiously. Nurse Peyton walked slowly around the room, examining each drawing with genuine interest. "Like it? I love it. This place needs more color." She pointed to a portrait Zara had drawn of her. "Is that supposed to be me?" Zara nodded. I tried to capture your smile. It's the first thing patients see when they come to this floor. The nurse's eyes grew shiny with unshed tears. Can I show the other nurses? Of course, Zara said, pleased by the reaction. Throughout the day, hospital staff found excuses to walk past Zara's room or peek inside. Dr. Chen from cardiology commented that the landscape of mountains reminded him of his hometown in Colorado. The janitor, Mr. Ellis, stood staring at an abstract swirl of blues and purples for so long that Zara finally asked if he was okay. "It's like looking at music," he said softly. "I used to play jazz saxophone before my arthritis got bad." By afternoon, Zara's room had become the talk of the oncology floor. Even Dr. Ramirez spent extra time during his rounds examining each piece. "You've brightened up the whole hospital, Zara," he said. "Would you mind if we kept some of your artwork up after you go home? It might help other patients feel less scared." Zara beamed with pride. "You can keep all of them. I'll make more." As the chemo drugs dripped into her veins, making her feel increasingly nauseous and tired, Zara clung to this small victory. Her art was helping others, not just by potentially raising money for her treatment, but by bringing beauty to a place filled with fear and pain. "Tell me about meeting Michael Jordan," Nurse Peyton said as she checked Zara's vital signs. "The whole hospital's buzzing about it." Zara brightened, always happy to relive that magical moment. "He bought my basketball painting, said he was going to hang it in his office." Nurse Peyton smiled indulgently. That must have been exciting. Something in her tone made Zara frown. "You don't believe me?" The nurse patted her hand. "I believe. You met someone who made you very happy, sweetheart. And that's what matters." "But it really was Michael Jordan," Zara insisted. "Mom took pictures, and the news even showed one on TV." "Of course, honey," Nurse Peyton said in the same gentle tone adults used when humoring children. "I'm sure it was very special." Zara slumped back against her pillows, too tired to argue. Why didn't Nurse Peyton believe her? Did she think Zara was making it all up, or confused because of her medication? "Show her the pictures, Mom," Zara said. Darlene, who had been dozing in the corner chair, woke with a start. "What, honey?" "The pictures of me and Michael Jordan. Nurse Peyton doesn't believe me." Darlene fumbled for her phone, but before she could find the photos, the hospital intercom crackled to life. "Attention all staff," came the administrative director's voice, unusually formal. "Please be advised that we have a VIP visitor in the building. Security protocols are in effect for the oncology floor." Nurse Peyton's eyebrows shot up. "VIP? We weren't told about any special visitors today." She hurried to the door, peering out into the hallway where staff were suddenly straightening their scrubs and looking alert. Zara didn't pay much attention to the announcement. She was focused on a new drawing, a pair of basketball shoes with wings sprouting from the heels, soaring above a hospital. The idea had come to her in a dream last night. In the drawing, the shoes cast a shadow that looked like a basketball hoop on the clouds below. She was so absorbed in getting the wing details right that she didn't notice the increasing commotion in the hallway outside her room. The hushed voices, the excited whispers, the sound of multiple footsteps approaching. It wasn't until Nurse Peyton suddenly gasped, "Oh my God!" that Zara looked up from her sketchbook. The door to her hospital room swung open wider, and there, filling the frame with his tall figure, was Michael Jordan himself. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, holding a large gift bag, and wearing a smile that lit up the sterile hospital room more brightly than all of Zara's artwork combined. "I told you he was real!" Zara exclaimed triumphantly to Nurse Peyton, whose mouth had dropped open in shock. Jordan laughed, the sound echoing off the hospital walls. Last time I checked, I was pretty real. He stepped into the room, followed by several nervous-looking hospital administrators in suits and a man Zara didn't recognize carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Jordan," the hospital director stammered, "we had no idea you were… we could have prepared a proper welcome." "This welcome is perfect," Jordan interrupted smoothly, his eyes fixed on Zara. "I wanted to see how my favorite artist was doing and check out more of her amazing artwork." He approached Zara's bed, seemingly unaffected by the medical equipment, the smell of antiseptic, or the stunned stares of the hospital staff crowding the doorway. "Hello again, Zara," he said, his voice gentler than it had been in the park. "I like what you've done with the place." Zara couldn't believe Michael Jordan was standing in her hospital room, looking at her artwork taped to the walls. It seemed impossible, like something from one of her dreams. "You came to visit me?" she asked, her voice small with wonder. "Of course," Jordan said, as if famous basketball legends visited sick kids in hospitals every day. "I told you I liked your art, and when Michael Jordan makes a promise, he keeps it." He turned to examine the drawings on the wall one by one, nodding appreciatively at each piece. Unlike the rushed way most adults looked at her art, Jordan took his time, commenting thoughtfully on details that most people wouldn't notice. "The perspective on this mountain view, the way you made the distant peaks fade into the mist, that's advanced technique," he said, pointing to one of her landscapes. "And this portrait, you captured not just what this person looks like, but who they are." Nurse Peyton, still standing frozen by the door, blushed as Jordan studied Zara's drawing of her. "That's Nurse Peyton," Zara explained. "She didn't believe I really met you." Jordan turned, raising an eyebrow at the embarrassed nurse. "Well, I hope I've cleared that up now." He moved on to the drawing Zara had just been working on, the flying shoes with wings. "Now this," he said, tapping the paper. "This is special. Mind if I take a closer look?" Zara handed him her sketchbook, heart pounding with pride and nervousness. Michael Jordan was looking at her drawing like it was as important as plays in a championship game. "You've got a gift, Zara," he said seriously. "The way you see the world, the way you show it through your art. That's rare." Then, turning to the still gaping hospital staff, he announced, "I'd like a few minutes alone with Zara and her mom, if that's all right." The administrators practically fell over themselves backing out of the room. Even Nurse Peyton left, though she gave Zara an excited thumbs up behind Jordan's back as she closed the door. Once they were alone, Jordan set the large gift bag on the end of Zara's bed. "I brought you something." Zara's fingers trembled slightly as she opened the bag. Inside was a brand new set of professional art supplies, paints, brushes, and special papers she had only dreamed of owning. At the bottom was a leather-bound sketchbook with her name embossed in gold on the cover. "This is too much," Darlene protested weakly from the corner, speaking for the first time since Jordan's arrival. "Not at all," Jordan replied. "I've been collecting art for years, Mrs. Wilson. I know talent when I see it. Your daughter has something special, and artists need proper tools." He reached back into the bag and pulled out one more item, a shoebox. "This is something extra." Zara opened it to find a pair of Air Jordans in her exact size, custom painted with colorful designs that matched her art style. One shoe had a pattern of swirling stars. The other featured a basketball with wings like the one in her drawing. "Feet tied your feet. Had my team rush these," Jordan explained. "When you're feeling stronger, these might help you fly." Tears welled in Zara's eyes, not from pain or fear as they so often did in this hospital room, but from a happiness so big it couldn't stay contained inside her. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to find better words. Jordan smiled, and for a moment, he wasn't a basketball legend or a billionaire or a celebrity. He was just a kind man making a sick child's day brighter. "The basketball painting you sold me?" he said. "It's hanging in my office, right across from my desk where I can see it every day." Before Zara could respond, there was a knock at the door, and the man with the briefcase poked his head in. "Mr. Jordan, we need to leave for your next appointment in 5 minutes." Jordan nodded, then turned back to Zara. "I have to go, but I wanted you to know that your art matters. Don't stop creating, no matter how tough things get." He held out his massive hand, and Zara placed her small one in it. They shook solemnly, like business partners sealing an important deal. "I promise," Zara said. As Jordan prepared to leave, he asked to take photos with Zara and the hospital staff. Nurses and doctors crowded into the room, everyone wanting to be in a picture with the basketball legend and the young artist who had somehow caught his attention. Jordan's last words to Zara before leaving were, "I'll be checking on your progress. Keep fighting. Keep creating." As he walked out, Zara heard him ask Dr. Ramirez, "Could I have a word with you privately?" The door closed behind them, leaving Zara's room eerily quiet after all the excitement. Nurse Peyton rushed back in, her Sisu eyes wide with disbelief. "I am so sorry I doubted you," she said to Zara. "I just couldn't imagine why Michael Jordan would. It seemed so unlikely." "It's okay," Zara said, still staring at the custom Air Jordans in her lap. "I wouldn't have believed it either." For the rest of her treatment that day, Zara's room had a steady stream of visitors, hospital staff finding excuses to pass by, peek in, or stop to chat. Everyone wanted to hear about Jordan's visit and see the gifts he'd brought. Zara answered their questions patiently, but as the day wore on and the chemo drugs took their toll, she grew increasingly tired. The excitement had drained what little energy she had. By the time Darlene was helping her pack up to go home, Zara could barely keep her eyes open. "Did all of that really happen?" she murmured as her mother wheeled her toward the elevator. Darlene smiled, carrying the gift bag with Zara's new art supplies and special shoes. "It really did, sweetheart. Michael Jordan really came to see you." "But why?" Zara asked, the question that had been nagging at her all day finally finding its way out. "Why would someone like him care about someone like me?" Darlene pushed the elevator button before answering. "Sometimes people recognize something special in each other. Maybe he saw in you what I see every day, a brave, talented girl who makes the world more beautiful just by being in it." As they rode the elevator down to the parking level, Zara wondered what Dr. Ramirez and Michael Jordan had talked about. Whatever it was, the doctor hadn't mentioned it during his final check before discharging her. She was too tired to think about it much now. But as she drifted off to sleep in the car on the way home, one thing was clear in her mind. Today had been magical, but tomorrow would bring the same challenges, the same illness, the same treatments, the same mountain of medical bills that even a $100 tip for a $20 painting couldn't begin to cover. What Zara didn't know was that while she slept, Dr. Ramirez was making a late-night phone call to her mother, a call that would change everything. Darlene was washing the dinner dishes when her phone rang. She dried her hands quickly, heart jumping when she saw the hospital number on her screen. Late-night calls from doctors were never good news. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mrs. Wilson, it's Dr. Ramirez. I apologize for calling at this hour, but I have something important to discuss about Zara." Darlene gripped the counter, bracing herself. "Has something changed with her tests?" No, Dr. Ramirez hurried to reassure her. "Zara's condition remains stable. This is about something else entirely. I need to meet with you as soon as possible, without Zara present. Confusion replaced fear. Without Zara? Why? Dr. Ramirez paused before answering. I've had some discussions today that could significantly impact Zara's treatment options, but I'd rather not go into details over the phone. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 U? I have a shift at the diner starting at 8:30, Darlene said, mentally calculating how many more hours she could afford to miss. Her boss had been understanding about her daughter's illness, but patience was wearing thin. Mrs. Wilson, I wouldn't. Ask if it wasn't extremely important, the doctor said, his voice serious. This could be life-changing for Zara. Something in his tone made Darlene's breath catch. I'll be there, she promised. After hanging up, Darlene tiptoed to Zara's bedroom door, easing it open just enough to see her daughter's sleeping form. The purple beanie had slipped off, revealing Zara's bare head, vulnerable in the dim nightlight. Darlene fought back tears as she quietly closed the door. She couldn't lose hope. Not now. Not when Zara was fighting so hard. The next morning, after arranging for a neighbor to stay with Zara, Darlene arrived at the hospital precisely at 9 a.m. Dr. Ramirez's assistant led her not to his usual office, but to a larger conference room. When the door opened, Darlene was surprised to find not just Dr. Ramirez waiting for her, but also the hospital's financial director, and a third man in an expensive-looking suit whom she didn't recognize. Mrs. Wilson, thank you for coming, Dr. Ramirez said, gesturing toward an empty chair. This is Thomas Reynolds, our financial director, and Mr. Winters, a representative from the Jordan Brand Foundation. The well-dressed man stepped forward, offering his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wilson. Darlene shook his hand, confusion mounting. Jordan Brand Foundation? As in Michael Jordan? Mr. Winters nodded. Yes, that's correct. I work directly with Mr. Jordan on his philanthropic activities. Please, have a seat, Dr. Ramirez said. Mr. Winters has something important to discuss with you. Darlene sat, clutching her purse in her lap, trying to understand what was happening. The conference room felt overly formal, with its large, polished table and leather chairs. Mr. Winters opened a sleek laptop. Mrs. Wilson, as you know, Mr. Jordan met your daughter recently and was quite impressed with her artistic talent and her spirit. Darlene nodded. He was very kind to visit her yesterday. The art supplies were incredibly generous. What you don't know, Mr. Winters continued, is that after meeting Zara in the park, Mr. Jordan made inquiries about her condition and treatment. He was particularly interested in the experimental therapy Dr. Ramirez had mentioned to Zara, the one not covered by insurance. Darlene's hands tightened around her purse. She'd been trying not to think about that treatment, a specialized immunotherapy that had shown promising results in early trials, but cost more than their house had been worth before the foreclosure. After visiting Zara yesterday, Mr. Winters went on, Mr. Jordan had a lengthy discussion with Dr. Ramirez. He was moved by Zara's story and her remarkable talent. He turned the laptop so Darlene could see the screen. On it was a document with the Jordan Brand Foundation letterhead. Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Jordan has decided to cover the entire cost of Zara's medical treatment, including the experimental therapy Dr. Ramirez believes could help her. Darlene stared at the man, the words not fully registering. What? The Jordan Brand Foundation will pay for all of Zara's current and future medical expenses related to her leukemia treatment, Mr. Winters repeated gently. This includes the experimental immunotherapy program that Dr. Ramirez has recommended. But that costs, Darlene began, her voice failing her. We're aware of the costs, Mr. Winters assured her. The foundation is fully prepared to cover them. Tears sprang to Darlene's eyes. Why would he do this? He barely knows Zara. Mr. Winters smiled. Mr. Jordan has always had a soft spot for children facing medical challenges, especially those who show the kind of determination and creativity your daughter displays. He believes Zara's talent should have the chance to flourish. Darlene looked to Dr. Ramirez, who was watching her with a small smile. "Is this real?" she whispered. The doctor nodded. "It's very real, Mrs. Wilson. If you accept this offer, we can begin the paperwork for the experimental therapy immediately. Zara could start the treatment as early as next week." "There's more," Mr. Winters said, scrolling to another page on his laptop. "The foundation will also provide a stipend to cover your living expenses during Zara's treatment, allowing you to take time off work to be with her." The tears Darlene had been holding back now flowed freely down her cheeks. For 6 months, she'd been working double shifts, cutting expenses to the bone, selling everything of value they owned, and still falling behind. The weight of their financial struggle had been crushing her almost as much as the fear of losing her daughter. "I don't know what to say," she managed between sobs. I can't believe." Mr. Reynolds, the financial director who had been silent until now, slid a box of tissues across the table. "It's quite remarkable," he agreed. "In my 20 years at this hospital, I've never seen anything like it." When Darlene had composed herself somewhat, Mr. Winters continued, his tone becoming slightly more formal. "There is one condition Mr. Jordan has requested." Darlene tensed. Here it was, the catch. Nothing this good came without strings attached. "Mr. Jordan prefers to keep his involvement anonymous for now," Mr. Winters explained. "He doesn't want publicity for this. He genuinely wants to help Zara because her art and spirit touched him. The foundation will be listed as the donor, but we ask that you not share Mr. Jordan's personal interest in Zara's case with the media or on social networks." Darlene almost laughed with relief. "That's the condition? Of course, we can keep it private. Zara and I would never want to exploit Mr. Jordan's kindness." "Excellent," Mr. Winters said, looking pleased. "In that case, here are the documents outlining the arrangement. Take your time reviewing them and feel free to have your attorney look them over. There's no rush to sign today." Darlene accepted the folder he handed her, still in a state of disbelief. "I don't have an attorney," she admitted. "The hospital can provide a patient advocate to help you review the paperwork," Dr. Ramirez offered. "But I assure you, Mrs. Wilson, this is legitimate, and it could mean a real chance for Zara's recovery." For the next hour, Darlene sat in that conference room, going through the documents with Mr. Reynolds and a patient advocate at the hospital. Called in? The more she read, the more real it became. This wasn't a dream or a cruel joke. Michael Jordan, a man who had no connection to them just days ago, was offering to save her daughter's life. By the time she left the hospital, Darlene had signed the necessary forms, and Dr. Ramirez had already started the process to get Zara enrolled in the experimental treatment program. The financial burden that had been crushing her for months had lifted, replaced by something that felt dangerously like hope. As she drove home, Darlene rehearsed what she would tell Zara. Following the agreement, she couldn't reveal Jordan's personal involvement, only that an anonymous donor through a foundation had offered to cover her treatment. Zara was in the living room when Darlene arrived home, sketching with the new art supplies Jordan had given her. "How was work?" Zara asked, not looking up from her drawing, a colorful scene of butterflies escaping from an open cage. Darlene took a deep breath. "I didn't go to work, honey. I had a meeting at the hospital with Dr. Ramirez." Zara's hand froze mid-stroke, her eyes snapping up to her mother's face, searching for bad news. "What's wrong? Did my tests come back worse?" "No, sweetheart," Darlene said quickly, sitting beside Zara on the couch. "It's good news, the best news." She took her daughter's thin hands in hers. "A foundation has offered to pay for your treatments." Zara's eyes widened. "Which treatments?" "All of them," Darlene said, her voice catching, "including the experimental therapy Dr. Ramirez told us about." Zara sat very still, processing this information. "But that costs—" "I know," Darlene nodded. "The foundation is covering everything, and they're providing enough support that I can take time off work to be with you during the treatments." A spark of suspicion flashed in Zara's eyes. "What foundation? This wouldn't have anything to do with Michael Jordan visiting me yesterday, would it?" Darlene hesitated. She couldn't lie to her daughter, but she'd promised to keep Jordan's personal involvement confidential. "The donor wants to remain anonymous," she said carefully. "All I can tell you is that it's a foundation that helps children with serious illnesses." Zara didn't look entirely convinced, but the possibility of receiving the treatment she'd heard so much about overshadowed her curiosity. "When do I start?" "Next week," Darlene said, feeling a surge of joy at saying those words. "Dr. Ramirez is setting everything up." For the first time since her diagnosis, Zara allowed herself to think beyond just getting through each day. The experimental treatment wasn't a guaranteed cure, but it offered something precious that had been in short supply: real hope. That night, as Zara slept deeply for the first time in months, Darlene sat at their small kitchen table, reading through the foundation documents. Again, one detail had caught her attention: a clause stating that all of Zara's artwork created during her treatment would remain her property. But the foundation reserved the right to request pieces for display at charity events with the artist's approval. It seemed an odd stipulation for an anonymous donation, but Darlene was in no position to question it. If someone wanted to display Zara's art while saving her life, that was more than a fair exchange. What Darlene couldn't know was that in his hotel room across town, Michael Jordan was looking at photos of Zara's artwork on his tablet, discussing with his team how her designs might be incorporated into something much bigger than either Zara or her mother could imagine. The following Monday, Zara entered Lakeshore Children's Hospital not through the usual entrance, but through a special, door-marked clinical research wing. Everything here looked newer, shinier than the regular hospital sections she knew so well. The walls were a soft blue instead of institutional white, and natural light streamed through large windows. "This place is fancy," Zara whispered to her. Mother, as a nurse, led them down a corridor. Darlene squeezed her hand. "Only the best for my girl." Dr. Ramirez met them in a comfortable consultation room that looked more like a living room than a medical space. There were actual armchairs instead of plastic seats, and framed artwork on the walls instead of generic health posters. "Good morning, Zara," he greeted her warmly. "Ready to start your new treatment?" Zara nodded, though butterflies fluttered in her stomach. Over the past week, she'd had a battery of tests to prepare for this day: blood draws, scans, and examinations that left her exhausted. But now, the moment had arrived. "The treatment you're receiving is called CAR T-cell therapy," Dr. Ramirez explained, using simple terms. "We're going to take some of your own immune cells, teach them how to better fight your cancer, and then put them back in your body." "Like training an army?" Zara asked. Dr. Ramirez smiled. "That's exactly right. We're training your body's own army to recognize and destroy the enemy cancer cells." As he continued explaining the procedure, Zara's mind drifted. She still couldn't believe some anonymous donor had decided to pay for this expensive treatment. The timing, right after Michael Jordan's visit, seemed too perfect to be coincidental, but her mother insisted she didn't know who the donor was, and Zara had no way to prove her suspicions. The first day of treatment was actually anticlimactic. They collected her blood, which would be sent to a special lab where her T-cells would be modified. The real treatment wouldn't begin for several weeks, when her engineered cells were ready to be returned to her body. "So now we wait?" Zara asked, as the nurse removed the needle from her arm. "Now we wait," Dr. Ramirez confirmed. "But you'll continue your regular treatments in the meantime, and you'll need to come in for monitoring twice a week." As they left the research wing, Zara noticed something strange. The hospital staff all seemed to be smiling at her, not the usual sympathetic smiles she was used to, but genuine, excited smiles. A janitor she'd never spoken to gave her a thumbs up. A cafeteria worker called out, "Good luck, Zara." Though Dr. Ramirez had explained that her participation in the experimental program was confidential, it seemed everyone knew. "Why is everyone being extra nice today?" she asked her mother. Darlene shrugged. "You're a popular girl around here, especially after your famous visitor last week." Back at home, Zara felt oddly deflated. She'd expected to feel different somehow after starting this miraculous treatment, but she still felt like the same sick Zara. Her body still ached, she still had no hair, and she was still tired all the time. She picked up her new leather-bound sketchbook, the one Jordan had given her, and began to draw. Art was her constant companion, the one thing that hadn't changed with her diagnosis. In her sketchbook, she could create worlds where she wasn't sick, where possibilities were endless. Today, she drew a girl standing on a mountain peak, arms outstretched to catch the wind, hair flowing behind her, the hair she no longer had but imagined would grow back someday. In the sky above the girl, clouds formed the shape of basketball shoes with wings. "That's beautiful," Darlene said, looking over her shoulder. "You should show it to your doctors next time." The next morning, a package arrived at their apartment, a large box addressed to Zara with no return address. Inside was a basketball signed by the entire Chicago Bulls championship team, with Michael Jordan's signature most prominent in the center. A note card read simply, "Stay strong. Keep creating. Your fan." Zara ran her fingers over the signatures in awe. "Mom, look at this. It has to be from Michael Jordan." Darlene examined the card, her expression unreadable. "That's very thoughtful, whoever sent it." "Oh, come on," Zara said, exasperated. "Who else would send me a basketball signed by the entire Bulls team? Why won't you admit it's from him?" Darlene sighed. "Honey, I don't want you to get your hopes up about Mr. Jordan taking a special interest in your case. He's a very busy man who was kind enough to visit, but nothing," Zara interrupted. "He bought my painting. He visited me in the hospital. And now the Michael Jordan Foundation is paying for my treatment right after he talked with Dr. Ramirez. It can't all be coincidence." Darlene looked uncomfortable. "Zara, please, let's just be grateful for the help we're receiving, and not worry about where it's coming from." Though frustrated, Zara dropped the subject. She placed the signed basketball on her dresser, where she could see it from bed. A reminder that someone important believed in her. As the weeks passed, mysterious gifts continued to arrive. Art books featuring famous painters Zara had mentioned admiring, a set of special watercolor pencils that had been out of stock everywhere Darlene looked, a tablet loaded with digital drawing software that Zara had only dreamed of using. Each gift came with the same simple note: "Stay strong. Keep creating. Your fan." Meanwhile, the waiting period for her engineered cells turned out to be harder than expected. Zara's regular treatments continued, and side effects seemed worse than before. There were days when she could barely lift her head from the pillow, when even holding a pencil required more energy than she could muster. On those dark days, she would look at the signed basketball, at the special shoes Jordan had given her, at all the mysterious gifts that kept arriving, and find the strength to pick up her sketchbook again. Her artwork began to evolve. The bright, cheerful scenes she'd always drawn gave way to more complex images. A girl walking through shadows toward a distant light, a small boat on a stormy sea, battered but still afloat, a bird with a broken wing still attempting to soar. Dr. Ramirez noticed the change during one of her monitoring visits. "Your art is developing depth, Zara," he commented, looking through her newest sketches. "There's more emotion here." "I feel more," Zara said simply. "Everything is bigger now. The scary parts are scarier, but the hopeful parts are more hopeful too." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "That's a profound observation. Would you mind if we displayed some of your work in the hospital? I think it could really help other patients." Zara agreed, pleased that her art might serve a purpose beyond her own healing. The hospital created a small exhibition in the main lobby, featuring a dozen of Zara's pieces along with a short bio explaining her cancer journey. What Zara didn't expect was the local news station picking up the story. A reporter came to the hospital to interview her about her art and her battle with leukemia. The segment aired on the evening news, highlighting how art was helping Zara cope with her illness while inspiring other patients. 11-year-old Zara Wilson is fighting leukemia with paintbrushes and determination, the reporter said. Her artwork, now on display at Lakeshore Children's Hospital, is touching hearts and raising awareness about childhood cancer. The day after the news segment aired, Zara's social media accounts exploded with messages from people touched by her story. A local gallery owner reached out, offering to host a proper exhibition of her work. "This is crazy," Zara told her mother. "People want to buy my paintings now." Darlene smiled, but Zara noticed she seemed nervous about all the attention. "It's wonderful that people appreciate your talent, honey. Maybe we can use the money to pay back the foundation that's helping us," Zara suggested. "That's very thoughtful," Darlene said, hugging her. "But they've been clear that this is a gift, not a loan. The best way to thank them is for you to get better." Finally, 3 weeks after her initial blood collection, Zara received the call they'd been waiting for. Her engineered T-cells were ready. The actual infusion process would be similar to a blood transfusion, Dr. Ramirez explained, but the effects could be dramatic as her newly trained immune cells began attacking the cancer. The night before the procedure, Zara couldn't sleep. She sat up in bed, sketching by the light of her bedside lamp. This drawing was different from any she'd created before, a self-portrait showing herself as she hoped to be after recovery. In the drawing, she had long, dark curls framing a healthy, round face. She wore the custom Air Jordans, and she was jumping in the air like she was trying to fly or dunk a basketball. The treatment day arrived with a mixture of fear and hope. As the modified cells flowed into her body, Zara imagined them as tiny warriors rushing into battle against the cancer that had stolen so much from her. "Now what happens?" she asked Dr. Ramirez when the infusion was complete. "Now we monitor you very carefully," he replied. "These cells will multiply inside you and start fighting the cancer. You might feel quite sick for a while as they do their work, but if all goes well, they could put your cancer into remission." The following days were among the hardest of Zara's life. Her body burned with fever as the engineered cells waged war within her. She was too sick to draw, too exhausted even to look at the gifts that had brought her comfort during the waiting period. Darlene stayed by her side day and night, sleeping, on a cot in Zara's hospital room, holding her hand through the worst moments. On the fourth day, when Zara's fever was at its peak, another package arrived. Inside was a framed photograph of Michael Jordan during his legendary flu game, the 1997 NBA Finals, where he played brilliantly despite being severely ill. The note: read, "Even champions have days when they can barely stand. Those are the days that matter most. Keep fighting. Your fan." Zara placed the photo where she could see it from her bed. When the nausea and pain became overwhelming, she would look at Jordan's exhausted but determined face in that image and tell herself, "If he could do it, so can I." By the end of the second week, something remarkable began to happen. Zara started feeling better, not just returning to her pre-treatment state, but actually better than she had felt in months. The bone pain that had become her constant companion began to fade. Her energy slowly returned. Initial blood tests showed promising results. The cancer cells were decreasing at a rate that made Dr. Ramirez openly optimistic. "It's working," he told Darlene, his professional reserve cracking to reveal genuine excitement. "We need to be cautious, but these early results are better than I dared hope for." As Zara regained her strength, she returned to her art with renewed passion. She began a series of paintings she called "The Battle Inside," abstract images representing her body's fight against cancer. The early pieces were dark and chaotic, but each subsequent painting showed more light breaking through, more order emerging from the chaos. A month after the treatment, Zara was strong enough to attend the opening of her exhibition at the Lakeview Gallery. The owner, Ms. Remington, had transformed the space to showcase Zara's journey through her art. People from all over town came, having heard about the young artist on local news. What nobody expected was that Zara's artwork would actually sell, not just to sympathetic locals wanting to support a sick child, but to serious collectors who recognized genuine talent. By the end of the evening, nearly every piece had a red "Sold" dot beside it. As the event wound down, Zara sat in a quiet corner, exhausted but happy. Through the gallery's front window, she noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. A tall man in a suit, Mr. Winters, though Zara didn't know his name, entered through the gallery's back door, nodding respectfully to her from across the room, but not approaching. She watched curiously as he examined each piece carefully, taking notes on a tablet. Before leaving, he spoke briefly with Ms. Remington and purchased Zara's most expensive painting, a large canvas showing a girl releasing colorful butterflies from a hospital window. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that his presence was somehow connected to Michael Jordan. But when she mentioned the man to her mother, Darlene quickly changed the subject. That night, as they drove home from the most successful evening of Zara's young life, she looked out at the stars and allowed herself to believe, for the first time, that she might have a future after all. A future where art and health and possibilities stretched out before her like an endless road. What she couldn't know was that the mysterious Mr. Winters was already sending images of her artwork to Michael Jordan, who was making plans that would take Zara's life in a direction no one could have predicted. 6 months after beginning the experimental treatment, Zara sat nervously in Dr. Ramirez's office. Today was the big day, the day they would review all her test results and scans to determine if the treatment had worked. Darlene held her hand, tightly, both of them barely breathing, as the doctor studied the charts on his computer screen. Dr. Ramirez looked up, his face serious. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his features. "Zara," he said, his voice slightly unsteady, "you're in remission." The words hung in the air, too enormous to absorb immediately. Zara stared at the doctor, waiting for more explanation, for conditions or warnings. "The treatment worked?" Darlene asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Better than we expected," Dr. Ramirez confirmed. "The latest scans show no detectable cancer cells. Your blood work is approaching normal ranges. Your immune system is recovering." He leaned forward, looking directly at Zara. "You've beaten this, Zara. You still need regular monitoring, of course, but all signs indicate the cancer is gone." Zara felt oddly calm, as if the news was too big for her emotions to process all at once. "I'm better?" she asked simply. "You're better," Dr. Ramirez nodded, his professional composure cracking to reveal genuine joy. "And based on your remarkable response to this treatment, I have every reason to believe you'll stay better." Darlene burst into tears, pulling Zara into a tight hug. 6 months of cautious hope, of trying not to expect too much, of preparing for the worst while praying for the best. All of it released in a flood of emotion. "Thank you," she kept saying to Dr. Ramirez between sobs. "Thank you. Thank you." The Haidu doctor handed them both tissues. "Don't thank me," he said. "This treatment wouldn't have been available to Zara without the Foundation's support. And frankly, Zara's own determination played a huge role in her recovery. Not all patients respond this well." As they left the hospital, walking through the sunshine without the cloud of illness hanging over them for the first time in nearly a year, Zara felt like she was dreaming. The world looked different somehow. Brighter, more vivid, full of possibilities that had seemed out of reach just hours before. "We should celebrate," Darlene declared. "Whatever you want to do, honey. This is your day." Zara thought for a moment. "I want to go back to Lakeshore Park, to the exact spot where I was selling my paintings when Michael Jordan stopped by. I want to draw something there, something to mark this day." Darlene smiled. "That sounds perfect." At the park, Zara settled on the same patch of sidewalk where her art sale had been almost 7 months ago. She opened her sketchbook, not the fancy leather one Jordan had given her, but her original, worn one with frayed edges and paint stains. As Darlene watched, Zara created a drawing of a girl standing on a mountaintop, arms raised in triumph. Behind the girl was the shadow of a much taller figure, clearly Jordan's silhouette, with a hand resting supportively on her shoulder. "Do you think he knows?" Zara asked, as she added final touches to the drawing. "About my remission, I mean." Darlene hesitated. "I'm sure the Foundation will be notified about your progress." "It was him, wasn't it?" Zara pressed. "All those gifts?" Signed, Your Fan. "The Foundation paying for my treatment right after he talked to Dr. Ramirez? It was all Michael Jordan, wasn't it?" Darlene sighed, looking around to make sure no one was within earshot. "Zara, I promised not to discuss the donor's identity. Please don't put me in this position." "You don't have to say anything," Zara responded. "Your face already answered my question." When they returned home, Darlene announced she was going to throw a small celebration party that weekend. Just close friends and the medical team who had helped save Zara's life. She spent the evening making calls and plans, her voice lighter than Zara had heard it in years. The day before the party, a large package arrived addressed to Zara. Inside was a glass display case containing the basketball painting she had sold to Michael Jordan, now in an elegant frame. A note read, "This brought me luck. Now I'm returning it to bring you luck for your bright future. Congratulations on your remission." It was signed simply MJ and included an invitation to a special event at the Children's Hospital the following week. Zara stared at the painting, her simple watercolor of a basketball soaring through a blue sky, now returned to her in a museum-quality frame. "He knew," she whispered. He already knew about my remission. Darlene examined the invitation. It says the hospital is unveiling a new wing next Friday, and you're a special guest. There's a note that says to bring your art supplies. The celebration party that weekend was everything Zara could have wished for. Talia was there, along with Ms. Lowry, her art teacher. Dr. Ramirez came with his wife, and Nurse Peyton brought homemade cookies shaped like paintbrushes. The apartment was crowded with people who had supported Zara through her illness, all of them celebrating the miracle of her recovery. As Zara moved among her guests, she was struck by how different she felt. Her hair was growing back, just short, dark fuzz, but definitely hair. She had gained weight, her face regaining its childish roundness. Best of all, she had energy, real energy, not the forced kind that ran out after an hour. "I'm proud of you," Talia whispered, as they shared a quiet moment in Zara's bedroom. "You never gave up." "I almost did," Zara admitted. "There were days I couldn't see any hope." Talia smiled mysteriously. "But you had help, didn't you? A certain tall person with basketball skills?" Zara's eyes widened. "How did you—" "I have my sources," Talia said with a grin. "And don't worry, I can keep a secret." The following Friday, Zara and Darlene arrived at Lakeshore Children's Hospital, not through the patient entrance as usual, but through the administrative doors where a staff member was waiting to greet them. "Zara Wilson," the woman said warmly. "We're so glad you could come. Everything's ready for the ceremony." She led them through hallways Zara had never seen before, to a section of the hospital that appeared brand new. Large doors with a ribbon stretched across them were the obvious focal point, with a small crowd gathered nearby. "What exactly is happening?" Zara whispered to her mother. Before Darlene could answer, a hush fell over the crowd as none other than Michael Jordan himself walked into the corridor, accompanied by hospital administrators and Mr. Winters. Seeing him again, not in her hospital room this time, but standing tall and impressive in a perfectly tailored suit, Zara felt suddenly shy. He seemed even more imposing than she remembered. But then Jordan spotted her, and his serious expression transformed into a warm smile. He walked directly to her, ignoring the hospital officials trying to direct him toward the ribbon. "Zara Wilson," he said, crouching down slightly to meet her eye level. "Congratulations on your remission. That's some serious determination you've shown." "Thank you, Mr. Jordan," Zara managed to say. "And thank you for returning my painting." He winked. "I told you it would bring luck." The hospital director stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously. "Mr. Jordan, if we could proceed with the ceremony." Jordan straightened up and moved to stand by the ribbon-covered doors. The crowd, mostly hospital staff, board members, and a few journalists, gathered closer. "Ladies and gentlemen," the hospital director began, "today marks an important milestone for Lakeshore Children's Hospital. Thanks to an incredibly generous donation from the Jordan Brand Foundation, we are proud to unveil a new space dedicated to healing through creativity." Zara listened, confused. What did this have to do with her? The director continued, "When Michael Jordan approached us about creating this facility, he had a specific vision in mind, a place where young patients could escape their illnesses through art inspired by one of our own remarkable patients." Jordan stepped forward to speak. "Many of you know that I've supported children's health causes for years," he said. "But this project is special to me." He turned slightly towards Zara. "Last year, I met a young artist selling her work to help pay for her cancer treatments. Her talent, courage, and determination reminded me of someone I lost many years ago." The crowd was silent now, hanging on Jordan's every word. "My cousin Donna was just 10 years old when she was diagnosed with leukemia. Jordan revealed, his voice softening. Like Zara, she loved to create art during her hospital stays. But 30 years ago, we didn't have the treatments we have today. We lost Donna when she was 11. A collective murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. When I saw Zara's artwork, when I heard about her battle, something connected, Jordan continued. It felt like coming full circle. A chance to help another young artist facing the same disease that took my cousin. Today, thanks to advances in medicine that the Jordan Brand Foundation is proud to support, Zara is in remission. Applause broke out, with several people turning to smile at Zara, who blushed deeply. "And now," Jordan said, moving toward the ribbon, "I'm honored to unveil the Zara Wilson Art Therapy Wing at Lakeshore Children's Hospital, a place where young patients can escape their illness through art, just as Zara did." Zara gasped as Jordan cut the ribbon. Her name was on the wall in elegant metal letters. The doors swung open to reveal a beautiful, light-filled space with art stations, supplies, comfortable seating, and, most surprisingly, her own artwork, displayed prominently on the walls. "Mr. Jordan," she whispered, overwhelmed, "I don't understand." "Come see," he said gently, leading her into the new wing. Inside, Jordan showed her around the space designed with input from art therapists and child life specialists. There were areas for painting, drawing, sculpture, and digital art. Everything a young artist could want. "But that's not all," Jordan said, gesturing to Mr. Winters, who opened a laptop to display images of colorful sneakers. "The Jordan Brand will be releasing a special line of Air Jordans featuring designs based on your artwork. A portion of every sale will fund this program permanently, helping other kids like you for years to come." Zara stared at the screen, seeing her distinctive style translated onto the iconic sneakers. It seemed impossible. Her simple drawings transformed into products that would be sold worldwide. "Why me?" she finally asked, looking up at the basketball legend. "Of all the kids with cancer, of all the artists, why help me?" Jordan's expression grew serious. "Sometimes life gives us second chances, Zara. I couldn't save my cousin Donna. But when I saw you sitting on that sidewalk with your art, so determined to fight for your life, I felt like I was being given an opportunity to make a difference this time." He reached into his jacket pocket and removed a faded photograph of a young girl with a gap-toothed smile holding up a drawing. "This is Donna," he said softly. "She would have been about your mother's age now. Her dream was to be an artist." Zara looked at the photo, then back at the man who had changed her life. "Thank you," she said simply. "No," Jordan replied. "Thank you, Zara. Your courage inspired this project. Your art will help countless other children find strength during their treatments." As the event continued, with speeches and tours of the new facility, Zara stood in front of her displayed artwork, barely able to believe that her simple drawings, created during the darkest time of her life, had led to something so meaningful. A reporter approached her with a microphone. "Zara, how does it feel to have a hospital wing named after you?" Zara thought carefully before answering. "It feels like my illness had a purpose," she said finally. "Like maybe all that pain was leading to something good after all." The reporter nodded, then asked, "And what would you say to Michael Jordan, who chose to help you specifically?" Zara looked across the room where Jordan was speaking with hospital officials. "I'd say that heroes don't just exist on basketball courts. Sometimes they appear when you least expect them, on an ordinary day in the park, and they change everything." 1 year after Zara's first sidewalk art sale, She returned to the exact same spot in Lakeshore Park. But this time, she wasn't alone with her mother and a worn blanket. Today, she was surrounded by a dozen children, some with colorful headscarves, others with the telltale pallor of illness, but all clutching sketchbooks and art supplies. "Okay, everyone," Zara called out, her voice stronger than it had been a year ago. "Today, we're going to draw what hope looks like to us. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just draw what comes from your heart." This was the weekly outdoor art class she taught for children with cancer and their siblings, part of the program she and Michael Jordan had created together. The Zara Wilson Art Therapy Wing had been such a success at Lakeshore Children's Hospital that they'd expanded the program to include these park sessions when weather permitted. Zara moved among the children, offering encouragement and guidance. At 12 years old, with her dark hair now grown into a short pixie cut, she was hardly older than some of her students. But her experience, both as an artist and as a cancer survivor, gave her words weight that even adult instructors couldn't match. "Miss Zara," called 7-year-old Marcus, holding up his paper. "Is this good?" Zara smiled at his drawing of a superhero wearing a hospital gown. "It's perfect, Marcus. Is that you as the superhero?" He nodded solemnly. "That's me after I beat cancer, like you did." From a bench at the edge of the gathering, Michael Jordan watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. He occasionally attended these classes, though he tried not to overshadow Zara's leadership. When he did participate, he would sit cross-legged, on the ground with the kids, creating hilariously bad artwork that made everyone laugh and forget their intimidation around the sports legend. Today, however, he was content to observe. The transformation in Zara over the past year amazed him. She had gone from a fragile girl selling art to fund her own treatment, to a confident young leader helping others through their cancer journeys. The Jordan brand shoes featuring Zara's designs had launched 6 months ago, becoming an unexpected hit. Collectors and art enthusiasts snapped them up, with many pairs going for well above retail price on the secondary market. The proceeds had far exceeded projections, allowing them to expand the art therapy program to 3 additional hospitals. When the class ended and parents began collecting their children, Zara spotted Jordan and walked over to join him. "That was a great session," he said, making room for her on the bench. "You have a gift for teaching." Zara shrugged modestly, but her eyes sparkled with pride. "It's easy when the kids are so amazing." "Did you see Marcus's superhero drawing? Last month, he could barely hold a pencil because of his treatment." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the families depart. So much had changed since their first chance encounter in this very park. Zara's health had fully returned, and her artwork was now recognized throughout the city. She had even been featured in several national magazines as a young artist to watch. "I have something I've been meaning to tell you," Jordan said finally. "Something I've kept to myself for a long time." Zara looked up curiously. What more could there be to the story that had unfolded between them? "Remember how I happened to walk by your art sale that day?" Jordan asked. "How I just showed up out of nowhere and bought your basketball painting?" "Of course," Zara nodded. "It was the luckiest day of my life." Jordan smiled. "It wasn't luck, Zara. And it wasn't random." He reached into his jacket pocket and removed an envelope, worn and creased from being carried for a long time. "I received this weeks before I ever met you." He handed the envelope to Zara. Inside was a handwritten letter, the script clearly that of a child. Zara began to read. "Dear Mr. Jordan, my name is Talia Moore. My best friend, Zara Wilson, has cancer. She's the best artist in the whole world, and she's really brave. But her mom doesn't have enough money for a special treatment the doctors say might help her. Zara loves basketball and draws amazing pictures of basketballs and shoes. I'm writing to everyone famous I can think of to ask for help. Please, if you can do anything, even just send her a signed photo. It would mean so much. I've included a picture of one of her paintings so you can see how talented she is. Sincerely, Talia Moore, age 11. Attached to the letter was a photo of one of Zara's early paintings, the very basketball painting Jordan had purchased that day in the park. Zara looked up, stunned. "Talia wrote to you. She never told me." "She wrote to dozens of celebrities," Jordan explained. "My foundation receives thousands of letters asking for help. Most get standard responses, a signed photo, maybe a small donation to a GoFundMe. But something about Talia's letter stuck with me. The way she described you, the photo of your artwork. I kept it in my pocket for weeks, meaning to have someone follow up." He gestured around the park. "When I was in town for that charity event last year, I decided to take a walk before my speech. I had Talia's letter in my jacket, as I'd been showing it to my team earlier, discussing how we might help. And then, by what seemed like incredible coincidence, I saw a girl selling artwork that looked exactly like the painting in the photo." Zara's mind raced, processing this revelation. "So, when you bought my painting, I already knew who you were," Jordan confirmed. "I recognized your style immediately. It felt like fate, like I was meant to find you." "But why didn't you tell me?" Zara asked. "Why pretend it was a chance meeting?" Jordan leaned back on the bench. "At first, I wanted to assess the situation myself, to see if what Talia had written matched reality. Once I met you and your mother, once I saw your determination firsthand, I knew I wanted to help. But I thought it would be more meaningful for you if it seemed like your own talent had caught my attention rather than your friend's letter." Zara stared at Talia's letter, tears forming in her eyes. "She never told me she was writing to celebrities. She just kept telling me not to give up, that something good would happen." "She's quite a friend," Jordan said softly. "She believed in you so much that she reached out to anyone who might be able to help. Of all the letters she sent, mine was the only one that found its mark. But that was enough." As the significance of this revelation sank in, Zara realized that the story she'd been telling herself for a year, the story of a lucky chance encounter with a basketball legend, was actually a different story altogether. It was a story of friendship so powerful that it had moved mountains to save her life. "Does Talia know that you received her letter? That it led to you finding me?" Zara asked. Jordan shook his head. "I've kept that between us. I thought you might want to be the one to tell her." Zara nodded slowly, imagining how she would share this incredible revelation with her best friend, the friend who had secretly been the catalyst for everything good that had happened. The sidewalk where it all began wasn't the beginning after all, Zara mused aloud. It was just the middle of a bigger story that started with Talia's love. Jordan smiled. "That's what I've learned in my life, Zara. The stories we think we're living are usually just chapters in a much larger tale. We rarely see all the invisible threads connecting us to others. The letters sent without our knowledge, the people working behind the scenes, the seemingly random encounters that aren't random at all." As they walked together through the park, where their paths had first crossed, or rather, where their paths had been deliberately aligned by a determined 11-year-old girl, Zara felt a sense of completion. The circle that had begun with illness and desperation had transformed into health and purpose. "What happens next in our story?" she asked Jordan as they reached the park exit. The basketball legend looked down at the young artist whose life had become intertwined with his in such an unexpected way. That's the beauty of it, Zara. We get to decide that together. The best chapters are still waiting to be written. And in that moment, standing in the late afternoon sunshine with her health restored and her future bright, Zara believed him with all her heart. Well, that's Zara and Michael Jordan's incredible story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button to help spread kindness and inspiration to others who might need it. And if you want to hear more emotional stories like this one, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Remember, sometimes heroes appear when we least expect them, and a single act of kindness can change everything. Thanks for listening.